Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new edition of Virtue's Rage right here on the BigVitoBrand.com. Also, Patreon.com/BigVMafia. I am Virtue, and that is my, I guess, I don't know if you're going to be my future debate opponent or what, but our little Okada Reigns thing was pretty successful on the No DQ channel for people not really caring about New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're approaching 1,000 views, a lot of thumbs up. A lot of back, people for you, people for me. What's up, Jargo?
It's great to be back, man. Yeah. It seems as though that conversation went over really, really well. You and I would just have that chemistry, Virtue, where we can sit down and we can just shoot, where it's like, okay, we're going to talk for 20 minutes. We have absolutely no game plan. Let's just kind of see where things take us, because, you have your opinions and I have my opinions, and we tend to somehow agree to meet somewhere in the middle. It's quite the interesting dynamic that we have in our conversations.
Well, then I have a topic that I don't know how this is going to go based on how we meet in the middle. Walter, right?
Walter.
Now, before I even say anything else, Walter is a German name. It could be, there's a few different countries, Walter could be involved with. Where is the wrestler actually from? Is he Austrian?
Austria, yes.
Which we know is close to Germany, but it's not Germany.
Right. But that's why he has such that thick accent.
And he was in NXT UK, and now he's migrated over to the NXT 2.0. He didn't get here in time for the other version of NXT. It's NXT 2.0, and what do we get? Gunther. It's Gunther, but you got to say it Gunther.
Right.
Now, the problem is WWE didn't do their homework, and I don't mind them changing names.
Are you sure that they didn't do their homework?
Or do you think they did? Oh, so here's the thing.
I mean, would you put it beyond them to name a guy from Austria after a Nazi U-boat captain? Because I don't put that past them.
So I'm actually giving them the benefit of the doubt that it slipped under the radar. You're thinking maybe they wanted to trademark Gunther Stark, who obviously they've scrapped that trademark. But I'm just curious, before I give you my thoughts on this, tell me yours here. Because I know you're probably, you're not in the land of sports entertainment like me. You'd rather just say, go give me my shoot name, let me go out there and wrestle. Where I don't mind them being the wrestler being a character with a made up name. So what's your take on this little debacle, if you will, that has recently happened? Because some fans, you know how they are, you're Nazi sympathizers, WWE.
Right. Well, I mean, if we didn't have 40 years worth of history to look back on, maybe I would feel a little bit differently about that. But, thanks to characters like Muhammad Hassan, I tend to not necessarily just give them a pass. But when it comes specifically to Walter, I am not a Walter fan. I have never been a Walter fan.
You've kind of said that before.
I've been very outspoken. I don't think Walter works on a national TV show. I think Walter can be the king of the independent wrestling scene forever. I just don't think that character translates to American television. And the first time he goes out and he starts slapping Randy Orton around like that, there's going to be some words had and things will turn into a shoot real goddamn quick, because Randy Orton ain't going to put up with that crap, right? That's always been my issue with Walter. The problem with changing Walter's name, though, as far as I am concerned, and Walter might be the last guy, where he had such a huge reputation on the independent wrestling scene that he had started to cross over to the AEW fan, the more mainstream pro wrestling fan. Everybody knew who Walter was before he even signed with NXT UK. He signed with NXT UK, 3 years ago? He was champion for almost 2 years over there. So, Walter has been on the radar for a very long time. We've even seen Walter on SmackDown a couple of times when, they had people stuck in a foreign country that we choose to not name. So, but they had the NXT stars that came up. They did that one episode of SmackDown. So Walter's even been on SmackDown at this point. To change his name now just seems stupid. because he already has that built-in fan base, right? Like AJ Styles. They didn't change AJ Styles' name because AJ already had a following coming in. That, to me, is the issue with changing Walter's name. It's not some random dude that just debuted in NXT and we're going to give him a new name, right? To me, it's a little different situation, especially when he's been with the company as long as he's been with the company.
It's definitely a Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard thing, right? Because they want control over this character if he's going to come into
and I
their new
understand that
world. Like, but
I
mean,
totally
I
get it.
But like, where's the disconnect? Like, did they not know he was still under the WWE umbrella as Walter? And so, if they wanted this change, why didn't they do it before? Why wasn't he just introduced to NXT UK as Gunther?
Right.
You know, so there's a disconnect.
If they would have done it then, I don't think it would have been nearly as big of a deal as it is now.
So I get you there, right? That's obviously a disconnect with Vince McMahon knowing what all of his developmental is. In terms of, even if it was Gunther Stark and they wanted to trademark him and bring him out in a Nazi flag with a Nazi flag, I have no problem with that because it's entertainment. And you can have a movie. You can have movies where you have Germans, whether it's based on true events or it's fiction.
Man in the High Castle. It was a Netflix or Amazon show. It was a huge hit, like right around the same time like House of Cards came out, and it was all about the freaking Nazis, right? Like, yeah, I'm with you, man. You can have a Nazi character on a pro wrestling show. It's a TV show.
WWE has always been sports entertainment because Sergeant Slaughter was an Iraqi sympathizer.
Muhammad Hassan was a terrorist. Mustafa Ali was a terrorist.
But and even then that got nixed, right? Muhammad Hassan got nixed, and he wasn't anywhere close to 2021 where we are, 2022 where we are now.
Right.
It's cancel culture. So it makes sense why people are going to complain because they have the internet, they have social media, they can Google things.
Well, I mean, my God. Kane, like before Kane came to the main roster, he was Unabomb.
Yep.
Like, you think that would fly in 2022?
Was that in Smoky Mountain?
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. And so, like, I don't have problems with that, right? And people are, if I say that on the review, oh boy, people are going to call me a Nazi sympathizer. But you are absolutely right. The fact that there's a disconnect in WWE, and when these people get signed, even at the NXT level, they should be on the, and maybe that's because the Triple H NXT and Vince, that's where the disconnect lied, and now trying to get more, hold on it. So these characters have the names that they're going to get called up with, right? So maybe that's why all this change is happening. And Walter was just caught in the crosshairs. Hey, you're coming on over. Vince is like, I didn't know we had this guy, even though he's been on some of the main shows, like you said. Now they're like getting excited. We're going to call you Gunther. And that's definitely a disconnect. And maybe WWE can get better with that, because they should have whatever their WWE umbrella name is. Because, WWE wants to have, when you're done with WWE, they don't want you to have that name. That's why they want to give you their name. So you can't make money off of it when they're done with you. They should definitely, anybody they bring in, say, this is what you're going to be called from here on out, and not fuck with anybody or their gimmicks, their names, or whatever. And I think Walter was just caught in the weird situation to where maybe Vince McMahon just found out about him. And I don't even know that. Like, we don't know. We've heard that him and Bruce and that crew is more involved with NXT 2.0. But how, we're not there seeing how they interact with that. But we do know that it's different now. And it looks more like a Vince McMahon product. So we can make those assumptions.
Well, but now, I mean, even when you just kind of start mathematically kind of figuring this thing out, when you look at all the names that they have released, all the people that they have let go that were behind the scenes talent, right? Like, I mean, even somebody like a Scotty 2 Hottie, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, William Regal, where it's okay, yeah, clearly Vince and company are running things because everybody else has been fired at this point except for Shawn Michaels.
And he's trying to find his next cartoon character, WrestleMania main eventer, in his vision, in his eyes, right? Not necessarily trying to find the next like Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar, but what he's trying to do. I mean, he's doing everything. Like, he's even trying to find his next Kurt Angle. Gable Stevenson's signed, not in NXT, but kind of he's in that other program. That other program they got, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. And then of course we see pictures of him like under Brock Lesnar's wing. It's like, whoa. And that's why I say this. That's why I say he's going to become a potential main eventer, because I see it happening by the pictures that are leaked with him and Brock, and the whole
Gable
angle.
Stevenson, he just wrestled here not too long ago, because he's still at the University of Minnesota, which is where Brock, and that's the Brock Lesnar connection.
But the gold medal. Yep,
but he just wrestled in Iowa City here a couple of weeks ago, because University of Iowa is basically the amateur wrestling mecca of the freaking world, and he was putting over how much he loved being at Iowa and Carver Hawkeye Arena, and it's his favorite place to wrestle and whatnot. Like, dude is just like a straight up white meat baby face, man. Even like coming in as a Minnesota wrestler in Iowa, he had the fans in Iowa City just eating out of the palm of his hand.
And the dude can do a backflip, but the question is, does he have that wrestling charisma? But, we're going to get – Vince McMahon is going to force who he wants to is these next top stars. Do you think, though, like that he's abandoned the whole Triple H philosophy, but like does Vince McMahon still know that there's still a good section of the wrestling fans that want – your Finn Balor's and your AJ Styles, but the newer generation of those type of guys, or is Vince McMahon going to let them all walk to AEW? I think part of him knows he's still going to need the worker, like the really good wrestling guys, like that can carry anybody you throw them in there with. So do we still have, even with this era that we're going to be in, with the new Vince McMahon, the splash color, let's make cartoon characters? Is there still going to be some room to find a next AJ Styles, a next Finn Balor? Or
they just re-signed Kevin Owens,
that's
right?
That's true.
I saw breaking earlier today, they just re-signed Sami Zayn. There's reports out there that they are doing everything humanly possible to make sure that Finn Balor does not go to All Elite Wrestling, because
they want the core. Seth Rollins, you can even though he's become a cartoon character, he's still Seth Rollins or Tyler Black.
Yeah, because I do think if Tyler Black showed up in an All Elite Wrestling ring, that would be big news. I think that would probably even be bigger news than Prince Devitt showing up in an All Elite Wrestling ring, don't you? I mean, at this point in their careers. So I think Vince knows that, but he wants guys that fit a certain mold too. And we know Kevin Owens can go out there and he can hold his weight on a stick. Sami Zayn can go out there with Brock Lesnar and cut entertaining promos week in, week out. Finn Balor absolutely appeals to the UK demographic, which is something that they are sorely hurting in, or were sorely hurting in. But now with guys like Sheamus is back, Drew McIntyre when he comes back, Finn Balor, Rhea Ripley, like they're really making a play to really kind of grab onto that UK market, especially during the pandemic before AEW can get over there, because the Khan family does have connections with Fulham First Class. So we know AEW is going to be running shows over there when the pandemic really hits. And now we see him, potentially bringing in Gunther, and maybe, they bring up all of Imperium and they try to go after that German market too. It's very, very deliberate when Vince sets his mind to doing some kind of expansion like that.
Now, let's take that philosophy and go over to AEW, and it's like the complete opposite. It's all Tony Khan's vision is all the wrestlers, and you still have sprinkled in there, Wardlow, a Rusev, or Miro.
Right.
Is that like basically the same thing but transposed or reversed? Right? Like, you know what I mean?
It's interesting. I know you're getting ready
I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but it's like the same thing we're just talking about, but opposite.
I mean, obviously you're getting ready for the review. And I'm not going to be on this week. And typically when I come on, I try to drop at least one ridiculous statistic that I've heard in professional wrestling throughout the week. Here's the one for this week. You ready for this?
And you'll be back on next week, by the way.
Oh yeah. I'm just not on this week. Last night on AEW Dynamite, there were 6 matches. 4 of them were basically squashes. I mean, even the Lance Archer, Frankie Kazarian that went 10 minutes was a squash match. That was Lance Archer over Strong. By comparison, there were 13 angles during that show last night to set up future matches. 13 angles to 6 matches. Not bad for a company that, gets accused of lack of storytelling, right? I mean, 13 angles. Even Layla
But
Hirsch
is anybody going to notice
heel.
that, or only you're like Hawkeye?
No, see, this is the problem. When I sat down with Eric Bischoff, let's see, it's got to be 3.5 years ago now. And I asked Eric Bischoff, what was the secret to Monday Nitro? Like, why was it so successful?
I know did he say long-term storytelling? Is that what he said?
1.5 things. He said that was the secret. 1.5 things. Every episode of Monday Nitro, you did 1.5 things. You would do one thing, and then you had something else setting something up for next week. 1.5 things. Because then everybody knew what to talk about. You were talking about what concluded and what was coming up next week. They did 13 angles last night on AEW. What was the lead story coming out of that show last night? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to talk about. There's too much to talk about. And that you forget. Well, I was going to say, yeah. You forget the other angles that happened throughout the show. You just remember the last angle or whatever the biggest angle was on the show.
You think that was purposely or just by happenstance? Do you really think they planned to do all of those? And that was all like Tony Khan's notes, or did that's just what happened by happening? Like, I don't know, man. I'd question that.
They do it every week, though, Virtue. Every week. I mean, if I did not know better, I would think Vince Russo was writing this TV show. This is Crash television.
He didn't even do that many. He didn't do that many though. Like,
but see, the Russo's thing, and people want to call it Crash TV, Jerry Springer, whatever. No, Russo's philosophy was everybody on the roster should have a story, bro.
Yeah.
And that's what they do in AEW. I mean, even like Brian Pillman last night, he's lost confidence. He can't do the springboard anymore. He's too freaked out by Malachi Black. Like, that's planting a seed for something that's going to come later. But there was so much that happened on the show that who's talking about Brian Pillman Jr. today? Nobody. It's just they're doing the Vince Russo Crash TV formula, and that's great, but it's too much. People forget what the hell happened.
It's too much for wrestling. Like yes. I'm watching all the American Horror Stories, and these are like 10-episode seasons. They add from, so it's not like it's 10 episodes. So they got to have a lot happen, right? Because you got to cram it. They have like a lot of stories being told at once. And so, like, when you say Crash TV, it works for some things, but maybe
52
it's not the most ideal for professional wrestling.
It's just it's so phonetic. You know what I mean? And the problem is where AEW fails, where Russo succeeded, was in Russo's world, everything was around Stone Cold Steve Austin.
It still was, yeah.
That was the theme throughout the show. It's either you were friends with Austin or you were trying to get to Austin, regardless of whatever your story was, because you were after the championship, you were after the top guy, and everything overlapped. The characters were intertwined, and all the characters had stories together that you could always tell. Inside of AEW, it's more like Saturday Night Live, where it's just segment, and there's no overlap of these characters. And that's where I feel like the disconnect is with AEW. Like, even when they do a good show that's heavy on storytelling, it's just like, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense because there's no continuity segment to segment.
And like, why am I not feeling the importance of Adam Page as the AEW World Champion? I mean, he's your main top champion right now. And I'm not feeling it because of maybe what you just said.
I think that's absolutely part of it. The other part of it is it's Sting when he finally beat Ric Flair. They spent so much time building up Hangman that they didn't build up the heel side of the roster for once Hangman became the champion.
And you said you like when some guys aren't on all the shows, like when Daniel Bryan takes a week off. Sorry, Bryan Danielson.
I actually thought about that last night. I was like, wow, I haven't seen Danielson since that matchup with Hangman like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. It's going to feel special the next time you get to see Danielson. Moxley last night. It was great seeing Moxley. He had that place in the palm of his freaking hand, man. You could have heard a pin drop in that arena while he was cutting that promo.
Yeah, he did. And you know, if he obviously wouldn't have been there if he didn't want to. That's going to be one of our topics. And he's always been a quirky guy.
Oh yeah.
But like as a television viewer last night, I felt like he still, maybe it was nerves coming back, right? Everything he was getting over.
It's John Moxley. Have you read his book?
No.
So his book came out in November.
If it's on Audible, I'll listen to someone read it back to me. I love when I'm driving. So I don't Audible.
Only if it's Moxley reading it. Like there's some books where it has to be the author reading it. Like I just finished Dave Grohl's book on audiobook.
I get that. Yeah.
Moxley's book is a stream of consciousness where
that's what his promo was last night.
Exactly. Like that's the difference in WWE and AEW. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Yeah. Where WWE will overscript somebody and AEW will give you just enough rope that you can go out there and hang yourself. I love the Moxley promo, but it felt like it just kept rambling and rambling. But after reading his book, I get it because that's Moxley. Like at the end of his book, he's talking about how, you know, I should probably go and get on a bus so I can go get on an airplane and I can go home and I can see Renee and we can have lots of crazy sex and then she'll make me cookies. But instead I'm sitting in a hotel room in Tampa Bay and I'm getting ready to bust light tubes over Nick Gage's fucking head. And it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Because it's just, that's the way he's
always been awkward too, because we learned that in the Stone Cold podcast, and that's his quirkiness. So like fans, that's what they expect out of him. But like I maybe overanalyze promos and stuff like that too much. It does feel like stress and like whatever is really going through that mind just doesn't makes
stream of consciousness cool, man. Where I like that little shoulder roll thing that he does and his cadence, and it's just everything is stream of consciousness to that dude. And you either like that about John Moxley or you hate it, you know. I mean, like, but it's Moxley and he's pretty damn authentic.
Well, another great edition of Virtue's Rage. I mean, it was an Okada Reigns edition, but we'll figure out something like that again. I think you, Colin, Andrew, myself, you and me, we're going to line up a series of some great no DQ debates over on no DQ for at some point between now and the summer through WrestleMania season. So we got to figure out some good topics. So what would you like to say in closing? Plugs, anything?
Keep up with me on social media at NotJargo, MichaelJargo.com. Of course, you can find me over in the Hameen Media Group over at channelattitude.com. I'm over at the 2-Man Power Trip with John Paz and over on Patreon. Of course, the big Vito brand, Men of Business, The Sit Down, of course, Virtue's Rage, and all other kinds of stuff, man. I'm everywhere. I'm like a podcasting whore at this point. Like if you got a podcast, I'll probably do it.
And you'll be back on the review next week over on NoDQ.com. Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. But that's it for Dr. Jargo. I am Virtue. We enjoy doing this. This has been Virtue's Rage right here on thebigvitobrand.com. And also check out patreon.com/BigVMafia. We will see you again next time.